Good morning, Internet, and welcome back to our read-through of Mecha Ace. We'll be continuing right where we left off, so let's dive right in. Colonial Warship Caliburn, 16 hours later. You wake up from your detox cycle just in time to see the Caliburn reach Crown Station. Your quarters have no windows, few purpose-built warships do. What it does have are a set of screens linked to sensors on the outside of the hull, allowing you to see the distant shape of the massive space fortress as the Caliburn approaches it. Crown Station is what is called an O'Neill cylinder, a pair of massive counter-rotating cylinders, each possessing their own atmosphere, each 8 kilometers in diameter and nearly 50 kilometers long. Inside these rotating artificial cocoons of metal and glass live hundreds of thousands of military personnel and millions of their civilian dependents. Around the mass of each of the station are specks of light and metal, dwarfed by the fleet base's immense size. Only when the Caliburn draws closer do these points of light coalesce into shapes. A vast motley flotilla of armed freighters, hastily converted passenger liners, and courier ships sporting improvised armor. In the midst of them are a half-dozen lean, gunmetal gray vessels of an entirely different breed, captured Imperial war cruisers and purpose-built warships, constructed since the start of the war. The fleet is here. The Caliburn begins its final approach, slowly drifting towards the massive blocky docking module placed at the center of the station where the two cylinders meet. Far beyond, you can see a dot of pulsating, shimmering purple, the entrance into the Vedrian wormhole, and the only point of entry from the Imperial-controlled core worlds into the Codex's major systems. The wormhole is the reason why Codex must make its stand here, why the fleet has been dispatched in all its strength. If Crown Station falls, the Imperials will control the wormhole. They will be able to launch attacks directly at the homeworlds of the Rebellion. The course of this war may be decided by the battle for this station. A few minutes later, after the Caliburn has docked, your doors open to reveal a pair of fully armored Marines. Without giving you a clue as to their purpose or intentions, they tacitly usher you out of your quarters, off the ship, onto the station's docking module, and onto a waiting maglev track transit cab. Wow, that's a tricky sentence. The transit cab takes you to one of the cylinders on the station. From there, you can see the full extent of the world built inside this massive hollow shape, one which is so tiny in the grand cosmic scale. You have been in enough space colonies in your life to no longer be nonplussed by the strange incongruities on being on such a structure, but the feeling of wrongness still picks at your mind as you look out the window at the gentle upward curve of the ground, of the wispy condensation of formative clouds sitting in the center of the cylindrical world, of the inside surface of the cylinder, the massive strips of kilometer-wide grass in the colony's shell, from which you can see the blackness of space, the distant running lights of the Codex fleet, and for a brief moment, the cold, sterile light of Vedria's distant primary star. The oddest sensation of all, of course, is the knowledge that, despite the nearly windless conditions outside the glass and metal shell of the transit car, and the celerity of the cab floors under your service boots, the entire habitat module is slowly rotating, just fast enough to generate a centrifugal force that must replace gravity so far from any planet or moon. It's still an odd sensation, knowing that almost every condition needed for life to survive and thrive has been recreated out here, in the depths of an empty, airless void. The entire station around you has been created by humans, not nature. Even so, the past 5 years of war have destroyed so much ingenuity, so much labor of mind and body. The station you are in, which likely took decades to build, might be destroyed in the course of a single day. What are your thoughts on that? If we could stop destroying? No. Conflict leads to progress. Yes, more fighting. Damn right. Almost every innovation ever discovered and exploited was done so because of its military applications. Gunpowder, radio, antimatter, inertial controls. Every single one became a tool which allowed human civilization to build higher and stronger because they were first used to win wars. To think that humanity would have benefited from the absence of conflicts that spurred such innovation would be the height of absurdity. The thought doesn't bother you much for the rest of that short trip. Two more Marines are waiting for you on the platform. The quartet of armed guards form a box around you as they direct you through a pair of security checkpoints. The Marines show their identification and submit to body scans each time, even though they are in uniform. Wherever you're going, it is protected by the strictest of security. Your escort takes you across a square, paved roadway packed with grounds cars painted the government issue gray. Guards stand at every corner, in full body armor, their rifles at the ready. The other side of the courtyard sits a low, blocky building painted the same gray as the vehicles parked in front of it. The edifice stands like a fortress, covered with solid walls and intimidating protrusions of reinforced neocrete. The emblem of the Kodak military hangs, shining and newly installed, over the recessed entrance. There's another security checkpoint at the door. You notice that the Marines aren't wearing the shoulder flashes bearing the crossed rifles and anchors of the fleet, but the quill and scales of the administrative branch, the emblem of the people in charge of promotions, reassignment, military intelligence, and court martials. You are led down a long corridor. After a while, each hallway starts blending into another, a long sequence of featureless gray walls, tiled granite floors, and harsh fluorescent lights. Finally, your guards stop you at a thick metal door, watched over by yet another pair of guards. After several seconds exchanging their identification, the doors open and you are directed through. Your guards stay outside. The room is small, barely enough to fit a stark metal table and two chairs. On the other side of the table sits a heavy-set, balding man with the rank pins of fleet captain and a darting, suspicious gaze, which marks him more clearly as a military intelligence officer than any shoulder flash. You automatically snap to attention as the door closes behind you.
Lieutenant Commander, the man begins, this debriefing is top secret. Nothing you say or hear in this room may be repeated to anyone outside of it, under pain of judicial sanctions. Is that clear?
You nod. A thin, tight-lipped smile appears on the intelligence officer's face, although I'm sure he's intelligent. He pulls out a tiny spherical object the size of a blueberry from his pocket and sets it on the table.
Begin recording,
the debriefing officer says. In response, the drone jumps up into the air and directs a set of recording lenses in your direction. The intelligence officer steeples his fingers and leans in.
Lieutenant Commander Alexander Kapek. For the record, you piloted the experimental combat armature designated the XCA-118 Lionheart during its first field test, correct?
You nod. That's not exactly a secret anymore. The question is likely solely for the record. The intelligence officer nods back.
Could you give me your impressions of the combat capabilities of the XCA-118?
It's got some issues. Let's tell him it's good. Let's tell him it's... The intelligence officer nods.
Yet, despite this misgivings, you refuse to install limiters on the XCA-118's propulsion systems to address the issues you've pointed out, ones which resulted in the incident that led to the premature termination of the aforementioned field test. Why?
You explain why you decided not to limit the Lionheart's performance despite your own misgivings. The debriefing officer is just going over the thought process of your decisions, which you had already made. Typical record keeping. The intelligence officer nods and pulls out an old-fashioned dossier, the kind that staff officers keep their classified documents in. It's a lot easier to hack a data tablet than a sheet of inert plastic. And after a moment of examining its contents, looks up.
Regarding the incident that led to the termination of the field test, he says, I'd like to ask you a few questions.
You can't really refuse. Your interrogator's next few questions concern the events just prior and just after your collision with the civilian vessel less than a week ago.
That civilian vessel was traveling without a filed flight plan, entered a zone which had been earmarked for military use, and failed to respond to communications. As far as I'm concerned, and as far as High Command is concerned, you won't face any sanction or further inquiry on your part for the incident.
You nod. It doesn't make you feel any better about the incident, but knowing that you won't be facing a full inquiry over the matter is a weight off your chest. However, the intelligence officer has one more question.
I would like to know how you managed to preserve your working relationship with Acting Ensign Watanabe during the subsequent operations, though.
You furrow your brow, puzzled. What does that have to do with anything? The intelligent officer tilts his head in confusion for a moment, then responds as if he were stating the obvious.
That ship was evacuating Vedria's civilian government off-world. Acting and Ensign Watanabe's parents were on board.
A deep, total silence falls over the tiny room. The debriefing officer realizes his mistake.
Ah, of course, Watanabe hasn't been informed yet. I suppose everyone here's been busy with dealing with the rest of the political fallout. I suppose I shall have to correct that as soon as this interview is over.
The thought is still sinking in. How do you feel? Oh my god. Fucking evil. Yeah, fuck that stupid kid. You make a conscious effort not to smile. You put up with enough of that whiny little brat's constant questioning of your decisions, of her inability to keep her mouth shut. You only wish you could look back to see the little shit's face once she gets the news. Oh, this is awful. Before your thoughts can coalesce, your interrogator presses on, changing the subject before you lose attention for the matters at hand.
Moving on to your actions during the defensive action over Vedria Prime, approximately 3 days ago. You were given the order to defend the Caliburn battle group and the civilian escorts. The battle group suffered a great deal of damage, and the evacuation ships were salvaged. Savaged.
Savaged?
Some unkind observers might consider your attempt to carry out your orders as an effort ending in failure. Would you agree with that assessment?
We did pretty well, depending. Yeah, that's a fair answer. The intelligence officer nods his head.
Perhaps you're right, Lieutenant Commander. I personally think you and your lance performed pretty well given the circumstances.
Before you have time to reply, the intelligence officer flips a page in his dossier and quickly steers the conversation in another direction.
Now, I understand that throughout these past few days, your unit has suffered losses as a result of some combat operations. What are your thoughts on that?
Our losses were regrettable but necessary. The debriefing officer doesn't have a reaction this time. He simply accepts your answer with a wordless, bare-faced nod and flips to the next and last page in his dossier.
I only have one question left regarding your wingman, Ensign Fatima Asadi.
The intelligence officer leans in closer until he's making full eye contact with you.
What are your opinions of Ensign Asadi's capabilities?
Genuinely torn here. Do I, in the hopes of courting her, say she's fine? Or do I take the evil path and throw her completely under the bus? We've made a couple of sacrifices thus far, and we just said that Watanabe deserved to have her parents die, so I think we've got a quota of evil in for this part. You have nothing but praise for your wingman. At length, you expound upon the young officer's virtues and skills in the cockpit. The intelligence officer seems particularly intrigued by your answer, even asking if you are sure about your opinion before he nods and finally closes his dossier.
I have no further questions, Lieutenant Commander. I'm sure the answers you provided will be put to good use in the very near future.
The intelligence officer gives you what was probably meant to be a reassuring smile, though you can easily pick up on how forced it is. You're not sure if you should be worried by that. The debriefing officer stands up, tucking his dossier under his shoulder.
All right, it looks like we're done here for now. Remember, not a word of what's been discussed here gets mentioned outside this room. The guards outside will take you back to your ship. We'll send someone over to conduct a follow-up to this debriefing at 0600 tomorrow. Until then, consider yourself on leave. We'll inform your CO.
With that, the intelligence officer walks out of the room, leaving the door open behind him. True to your interrogator's words, the guards are more than willing to lead you back through the labyrinth hallways of the complex and out of the heavily patrolled front entrance. Within minutes, you and your Marine escort find yourself back in another transit cab, heading back towards the docking module where the Caliburn awaits. Your top secret debriefing has certainly given you a lot to think about. Why exactly did the intelligence officer ask for your opinion? While a lieutenant commander is hardly low on the chain of command, you're not quite high ranking enough to be shaping policy or grand strategy. More worryingly, your debriefing seems to have emphasized your recollections of particular events, which some might consider your failures. Is there a reason for that? Is some assembly of high-ranking officers sitting in some darkened room, looking over your records and passing judgment over your career? Why did your interrogator ask the questions that he did? What are the answers going to be used for? And what is your mysterious follow-up tomorrow morning going to involve? Hmm. What do I think? You know what? For shits and giggles, I think we'll go with the first one. I genuinely don't remember what I picked last time, but I feel like it was either two, three or four here. But let's be. Is paranoia the same as evil though? I don't know. Just so you have an idea of my thought process here, I'm going. Well, if I trick my character into thinking they're after him, maybe I'll be able to go. Well, not if I get them first, sort of thing. We're not gonna worry. Who cares? No doubt the defense committee had their reasons for bringing you in to interrogate you, but it's not your job nor your place to find out what those reasons are. Besides, whatever purpose they might have had in questioning you probably originated from way above your pay grade, from Fleet Command maybe, or even the defense committee all the way back on Alberon. Either way, whatever the point was, you don't think it will be your problem. After all, you've done nothing wrong, right? It takes the rest of your ride back to convince yourself of it. No, we didn't do anything wrong. All in all, the whole debriefing process has taken up about 3 hours by the time you get back to the Caliburn. Seeing as how you're basically on leave for the rest of the day, that means you've got probably some time to see a few people and get a few things done before your sleep shift. Let's go talk to a Sadie. Ensign Sadie isn't in the wardrobe, the pilot's ready room, or even the galley. You search every public area on the ship, but you find no sign of your wayward wingman. You check in with the sentries at the docking module. They haven't seen her either. Ultimately, you conclude that, however improbable it may seem, Ensign Sadie is in her quarters. You key the doorbell 3 times before the door opens, and then it takes you a moment to realize that the person standing at the other side of the door is actually the one you came to see. A civilian or uninitiated observer might have found nothing wrong. The junior officer is still in her uniform, tunic neatly buttoned up, and she smells faintly of fresh soap and evaporated water of the newly showered. But you've served with your wingman long enough to quickly recognize how bad of a state the ensign is in. Sadie's uniform may be tidy, but her hair is even more disordered than before. Deep bags hang under her eyes, and you notice a half-full bottle of clear liquid sitting on the desk behind her. A glass of the stuff sits in the ensign's hand, untouched. Oh. 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 Hey, boss. What's up? Uh. Oh, shoot. I really wish I remembered what we took last time. Holding up, or something's messing with your head. Well, we've come this far, and I haven't fucked anything up yet, so I'm gonna keep going with my gut. A Sadie almost seems to have been waiting for you to say exactly that. Her expression is one of more is one her expression is more one of relief than anything else. All right, come on in and I'll tell you about it. Yes, score one. A Sadie leads you into her quarters. Her rooms are a lot smaller than yours, but the essentials are still there. Bed, desk, a small closet-sized bathroom compartment. Everything seems neatly tucked away into its storage units and shelves. Your wingman sits down at the table and pours you a glass from the bottle of the clear liquid. Almost immediately, you can tell that whatever is in your glass is strong, too strong to be officially allowed on board. Then again, that's always been more of a regulation most ignore. A Sadie waits for you to sit down opposite her before leaning in. Swirling the contents of her glass around for a moment, she hesitates. It's clear that this is not going to be an easy thing for your wingman to let out. For a few moments, there is no sound save the gentle humming of the Caliburn's engines. It was that it was that recon mission, she says finally. What? That recon mission the rest of us got sent on, when you were test piloting the Lionheart, the one where I was in command. You nod. You weren't there for that one. A Sadie puts her glass to the lips and takes a deep swallow. I messed up. I nearly got everyone killed. What happened? Your wingman stares back at her half-empty glass for a moment. We were sent to look out for the Imperial battle group, the one that attacked Vedria to try and steal the Lionheart. Instead, we found the entire Imperial Grand Fleet and barely made it back with our hides. You know that part, right? You nod. You do remember that part. What you don't know is that we knew the Imperial fleet was there before they even saw us. They were so damn obvious it wasn't even funny. Set up in some kind of pompous parade formation. They didn't encrypt their comms. They didn't have an escort screen. Their pickets were so half-assed that they had blind spots big enough to fly another smaller fleet through. It was like those arrogant bastards knew they were completely untouchable. A Sadie does take a drink this time, draining the rest of her glass in a single fluid motion. So I decided to give them something to think about, remind them that they could still die like the rest of us. I ordered the Lance to move forward into extreme weapons range and fire off some pot shots. I figured we'd trade some shots with the pickets, do some damage, then get out. You nod, though you tried to look not though you try not to look too approving. You aren't exactly adverse to a little aggression yourself, but goading the entire Imperial Grand Fleet with a single lance is a bit chancy, even in your opinion. A Sadie shakes her head and pours herself another glass. Yeah, didn't quite work as planned. The Imperials didn't return fire. They charged straight at us, swarmed us faster than we could react, and we had to fight our way out and run all the way back to the Caliburn. The ensign breathes a deep, long sigh. The captain chewed me out over it when I got back. She said that I was lucky I didn't get your whole command killed out from under you. A Sadie shakes her head. It wasn't until I had some time to think about it that it really sunk in. She holds up her hand, index and finger and thumb a hair's breadth apart. I was this close to getting everyone killed because of my own orders, and I thought, by the all-glorious, is this what being in command feels like? Your wingman hesitates as if she's just realizing a damn revelation. All this time, I've thought if only I had been in command, we could beat the impies. Now? I'm not so sure anymore. A Sadie shakes her head and takes another drink. It's almost terrifying to see your normally impetuous wingman so maudlin. Let's ask her why she wants to win the war so badly. You feel as if it's a stupid question the second it escapes your lips, but to your surprise, Sadie doesn't respond with one of simple, almost infantile reasons you'd expect. Why? So I can see my parents and my little brother again, so that after 5 years I can finally go home. For a moment, there's an awkward pause. My family lives on Libertad 3, she says in way of explanation. I was at school on Albanon when the rebellion started. The impies occupied the colonies in the Libertad system in order to restore order soon after. The last message I got from my mom was saying that they were joining a bunch of like-minded people. Old militia and police, activists, radical school teachers, you know the type. They were planning on starting a partisan group to fight against the occupation. A Sadie takes another drink. That was 5 years ago. For all I know, they could already be dead. But I joined the military because I thought every impy I killed would bring me one step closer to freeing my home world and finding out where they are for sure. Your wingman chuckles, a bitter, hollow thing. You know, I used to have dreams about it. My parents and friends fighting off Imperial Marines in some forsaken corner of nowhere, and then I'd appear in my Granger at the head of my own lance, like Jabral bringing down the wrath of utterly just. Sadie grimaces a little, more at her own words than anything else. Yeah, sounds stupid now, doesn't it? Since that mission, I've been second guessing myself. I don't know if what I want is something I really want anymore, if that makes sense. Your wingman leans forward, face in her hands. Honestly, I'm not sure what to think anymore. Knowing that every single decision you make might get someone killed. How the hell do you deal with that? Hmm. I do remember us saying something along the lines of, you don't let them die in vain. Hmm. Would this snap her out of her funk? Not going with that. Not going with that. Do we encourage her to fight as hard as she can? Or do we tell her to suck it up? Oh, decisions, decisions, decisions. Legit flipping a coin right here. Okay, suck it up. We might just totally fuck this up right here, right now. Ah! A Sadie recoils in shock. Boss? You have the initiative and you use it to the best of your abilities. This war doesn't revolve around you, Ensign. In every major battle, thousands of people die. If you're in command of other people, sooner or later, some of those people dying are going to be the ones serving under you. I'm not going to force feed you platitudes about how keeping everyone under your command alive, because then about how to keep everyone under your command alive, because then I'd just be lying. The truth is, men and women in your unit will die. Sometimes there's nothing you can do to prevent that. Your wingman seems almost paralyzed by the force of your words, but you keep going. A good commander doesn't stay up at nights thinking about all the things who have died under their watch. A good commander doesn't care. A good commander recognizes that a single death means squat in the grand scheme of things. A good commander knows that hundreds of people under their command of other good commanders die every day, and that they don't let that get in the way of completing their objective and winning the war. You lean in, making eye contact to emphasize your point. Until you realize that, you'll never be a good commander. Understand? Your wingman seems frozen for a moment. Then she sighs and nods. Yeah, I get it. Thanks. I needed that. Oh, that might have been the right choice. I don't know. Sadie puts the bottle away. The brooding look on her face is gone, but your wingman still seems pensive. Thanks, boss. That helped a lot. I guess I've still got a lot of thinking and staring at walls to do before I figure this all out, but I feel better. Like it's been cut down to something I can tackle myself instead of this big, unbreakable wall moving in on me. I think I can work this out. You nod. I'm happy to help, Sadie. You exchange a few more pleasantries as you take a few minutes to finish up the contents of your own glass. Your wingman doesn't bring up any more problems, but as you turn to leave, she stops you. Hey, boss. You turn back around. Yeah? Your normally impetuous wingman hesitates, scratching the back of her head as she works up the courage to say something. I'm smirking like an asshole, just so you guys have an idea. I was wondering. Sadie freezes, takes a deep breath, and tries again. Do you want to do something after everything quiets down a bit? Like coffee or dinner, just the two of us? The implications here are pretty obvious. Sadie's never been this nervous talking to you before, and it probably took a lot of guts for her to ask you. You consider your response. Now, now would be funny to bluntly say, no, fuck you. That would be genuinely evil. But I am more curious about the how things turn out. So we'll accept. We've been. It would be too much sacrifice to just say fuck you. Besides, we wound up with everybody dead and alone last time, and that was the hero's path. Maybe the evil guy gets the woman. Wouldn't that be a change? You nod. In a few days, after this is all dealt with? Sure, I'd love to. Sadie replies with a cocky grin. The same kind you've seen so little of in the past few days. All right. Last time I was here, I found this nice little place outside the docking module. It's not too fancy, but the food's good and there's no dress code. I'll show you when we deal with these impy bastards, and we'll both get some leave. Sounds good. You turn to leave. Hey, boss. Yeah? Sadie looks at you with an intense earnestness that you've never seen before. Don't get killed. You stop at the galley for a quick lunch before heading back out. What else were you planning on doing today? Uh, let's go see if we can be a dick to Watanabe. You're pretty sure you know where to find Watanabe, but the trip still takes you far too long. With every step, you try to put together the right words to say to the newly orphaned bridge controller. In the end, it takes you nearly an hour to walk the length of the ship to where Watanabe's quarters are. Once there, it still takes you a few moments to work up the guts to knock on the teenage volunteer's door and announce your presence. You wait for the door to open. Nothing. After a minute, you try knocking again. 3 more times you rap your knuckles against the unmoving metal door. You don't get a single response, or even a sign that the kid is even inside. After your 4th fruitless attempt, you resort to calling the bridge controller's personal comms, but nobody picks up your call. You keep trying for a few more minutes until an annoyed comms technician gets on the line to remind you, politely, you still are a senior officer, that personal comms are for official business only. It's clear that Watanabe doesn't want to talk to you right now. Perhaps she never wants to talk to you again. Either way, there's no further point in standing outside her door. It's nearly the middle of the afternoon now. You figure you probably have time to make one more visit before going to sleep. Screw the captain. Let's go talk to Weaver. Be a dick to him a little bit. You head down to the hangar bay to look for the deck chief, only to learn that he has been gone all day. However, no sooner do you get your answer does the missing NCO walk through the heavy blast doors, flanked by a pair of fully armed Marines. From halfway across the hangar, you can see one of the guards exchange a handful of words with the deck chief before nodding and walking off. Chief Weaver watches them go for a minute, sending them off with an irreverent wave with which you're pretty sure the Marines didn't see. Then he sees you. Lieutenant Commander Capek? Oh, I suppose you've got a reason for being here. The deck chief waits for the percussive beat of the Marine jackboots on the decks to fade away before he continues. Hell of a morning, Lieutenant Commander. Spent 3 hours in a tiny climate-controlled room sitting across from a young lady who didn't understand half the answers coming out of my mouth. You glance quickly towards the still open blast doors of the hangar bay, but the Marines are long gone. You too? You venture, tenuously. Weaver nods. Yeah, right as we docked. Can't give you any details, of course. If I did, Mill Int would probably have me shot, my family shot, my dog shot, and probably even slap you on the wrist a little. The deck chief laughs at his own joke, but you're not sure you get it. To his credit, Weaver catches on the lack of your amusement quickly. I can explain that one if you want me to. Yeah, explain that to me. Weaver's eyes open a little. He probably wasn't expecting you to actually ask.
Well, it's just that when it comes to things like security breaches and the like, military justice tends to come down a lot harder on us enlisted folk than you officers. The deck chief puts up his hand placatingly before you can respond. Now, I know there are reasons for that sort of thing, but it doesn't mean it can't be used for a little gallows humor. You nod. The unstated reasons are pretty well known. The Civil War had started with a small corps of senior administrators and defecting imperial officers. Those who had jumped at the call had been fast-tracked to the officer ranks, while those who joined up once it only became clear that a rebellion had a chance of succeeding, or who were volunteered against their will by local planetary governments, filled out the enlisted ranks. While the system isn't perfect, it does work. Promotion is still based on merit, and there's nothing stopping a ranker with a distinguished service from making officer if there's a post available. Still, the differences between the enlist and commissioned ranks do exist. One of those being that military courts do not often treat transgressions by enlisted personnel much more harshly, especially when it comes to those who did not join entirely of their own volition. You're still not sure if the whole thing is an actual problem or just an idiosyncrasy worth nothing more than an idle joke. Either way, apparently your hangar chief finds it funny enough to joke about. Weaver walks over to the table next to you and picks up his data tablet. Now, did you come here to listen to me make bad jokes, or did you have other questions? What happened during your debriefing? Let's probe. Weaver shrugs. Well, they picked me up as we docked, and they took me across the station. We took the transit car to some administrative building, walked through a bunch of hallways. I had a nice long chat, answered all the questions, and they sent me back here. You nod. It sounds like roughly the same thing they did to you. You know, it was real funny. They asked me a few questions that I ain't got permission to talk about, but then they changed the subject. They danced all around it, but when I was sitting there, they weren't interested in the stuff that should have been classified. Just my opinion. Your opinions? The deck chief leans back and nods. Just my opinion. Some about you, some about Captain Balin, but mostly. Weaver raises a hand and jerks a thumb at the white armored prototype sitting in the closest of the servicing bays. Mostly about that. Weaver moves closer, his voice low. Now, I can't tell you what questions they asked me, or what my answers were, but I can still speculate. And my speculating's telling me that High Command's making extra sure the Lionheart's pilot is the best person for the job. You glance back at the prototype, proudly bearing the wear and tear of your last two battles together. Why would you say that? Weaver's face melts into a knowing smirk. Because they know that the Lionheart is a secret weapon that's going to win us the war. What do you think about that? With me at the controls, we can win this war single-handedly. Sure, let's be cocky. Weaver shakes his head. Don't be a fool, Lieutenant Commander, his tone remaining gentle as he chides you. It'll take more than one pilot and one machine to win this war. The deck chief looks at the white machine. My guess is, if you do well in this battle we're supposed to be fighting soon, they'll probably start mass producing those machines. It won't be in numbers big enough to equip the entire Kodak military, of course. The exotic materials that went into the armor alone must have been enough to pay for a light cruiser. Weaver looks back and shrugs. My guess? They'll be trying to field 3 or 4 lances. Use them as an elite strike force to hit big targets. You raise an eyebrow. You think so? Weaver nods. Sure thing. Give the best troops the best equipment and throw them at the hardest targets at the crucial moment. It's an old idea, but it's still one that works. Armies have been doing it all the way back to Alexander the Great, for whom we are named after. All right, I gotta go. I don't give a shit about your dog and your family. The deck chief nods. All right, then. Weaver sketches out a quick salute. I'll just get right back to work. The hangar boss turns his back and walks off without giving you a second thought. You make your way to the galley for a quick meal. The fare is as unappetizing as ever, but you shovel it down quickly before you are too tired to eat. With dinner out of the way, you head back to your quarters and fall into bed, exhausted. The next morning, you're woken up by loud and insistent knocking.
When you answer the door, you find yourself faced by a very thin, balding man with a long, cadaverous face and expensive suit. Behind him stand a pair of armed Marines.
Good morning,
Says the man in a clipped, businesslike tone flavored with the accent of your native Albion. He extends a skeletal hand towards you. Out of politeness, you take it. Instead of shaking your hand, the man takes it and presses your palm against the screen of a data tablet nestled in the crook of his other arm. After a moment, a part of the data tablet screen flashes green. He smiles at you, a taut, cold thing which does little to reassure you.
Lieutenant Commander Capek, I presume.
You nod.
Good. I shall need you to get dressed immediately. Once that is done, you are to follow me. Am I understood?
You nod again.
Good. Get to it.
For the second time in 24 hours, you find yourself being led out of your quarters under Marine escort. This time, however, you are not led to Crown Station's docking module. Instead, you're taken the other way, to the aft sections of the ship, and ultimately through the open blast doors of Hangar Bay B.
Clear out, everyone!
The man in the suit orders at a voice barely above a whisper as the four of you step through the doors. The two Marines immediately spring to action, herding the dozens of deck crew away from the machines they are servicing and towards the doors.
What the hell's going on here?
Chief Weaver demands as one of the Marines gently prods him across the hangar bay. The suited man holds up a thin hand and the Marine halts.
Hold on a moment. Bring him here.
The Marine brings Weaver over to the man in the suit. Without missing a beat, the man seizes the deck chief's hand and presses it against the data tablet. Once again, the screen flashes green. He smiles his bare, disconcerting sneer again.
Chief Petty Officer Weaver, I shall require you to remain with us as well.
The deck chief glares daggers at the man as he takes his place next to you. Once the deck crews are pushed out of the hangar bay, the two Marines take the position at the doors to dissuade the curious. For a minute or two, you wait in heavy silence until finally a figure pushes her way through the guards, Captain Balin. The man turns to the Marines.
They're all here,
he declares in his reedy voice.
Shut the blast doors, take up guard outside. No one goes in until I come out.
The two guards salute and step outside, closing the doors behind them. The man in the suit takes a good look at the three of you, making eye contact for just a moment as he does, before nodding to himself in evident satisfaction.
Good. Now we may begin. My name is Dr. Williams Chatham.
The doctor begins pacing before the three of you, his slender hands clasped behind his back.
I currently have the honor of being the Director of Special Projects and Initiatives for the Wellington Defense Industries.
None of the three of you manage any kind of response. Despite his tiny stature, the doctor's personal presence is formidable, as if he were surrounded by an aura of frigid air. The effect is a disconcerting one, even to you, and you can see that Chief Weaver and Captain Balin are no more at ease. Dr. Chatham himself, on the other hand, pays no mind. Either he has never become aware of it, or he has seen its effects so often that he no longer cares. He continues pacing and speaking.
If that title means absolutely nothing to you, then I shall clarify the extent of my responsibilities, powers, and obligations by utilizing simpler language.
Dr. Chatham stops pacing and turns on his heel to face you.
I am the individual responsible for the creation.
The doctor raises an arm, pointing a bony finger towards the shiny bulk of the Lionheart.
Of that. The XCA-118 Lionheart and the facility on Vedria Prime devoted to its design and manufacture were my responsibility. Its destruction by Imperial forces would normally be a death knell for the project.
Dr. Chatham clasps his hands together again and offers his colorless, thin smile again.
However, due to the combined efforts of the three of you, the Lionheart's prototype unit has been recovered. Better yet, your impromptu field test, while lacking a great deal of scientific rigor, has provided me with the necessary data to complete the Lionheart's unfinished systems.
The man from WDI steps forward and begins pacing again.
As of yesterday, I have taken personal control of the Lionheart project. I have made the decision to waive all remaining field tests.
Dr. Chatham turns to you, fixing you with an empty-eyed stare.
Lieutenant Commander Capek, you have been reassigned as the Lionheart's pilot. You will not be permitted to fly in another machine, nor will you allow any pilot into the other pilot into the Lionheart's cockpit. Next, he turns to the hangar boss. Chief Petty Officer Weaver, you will deliver me a list of every crew member who has access to the Lionheart's specifications, hardware, or flight software. They are now to be considered potential security risks and must be screened. Finally, he turns to the Caliburn's commanding officer. Captain Balin, you are responsible for the maintenance of operational security and the safety of the Lionheart prototype. The doctor once again makes eye contact with the three of you one by one. Are there any questions? Nope. Dr. Chatham nods. Excellent. And I have one final item on the agenda. The Lionheart itself. The doctor wraps a few icons on his data tablet and shows the three of you the screen. Displayed is the wireframe model of the Lionheart in exacting detail. My original plan was to merely update the Lionheart's flight system with one of its own dedicated software. This software is dedicated specifically to work with the Lionheart, thus preventing a repeat of the rather nasty malfunction you encountered on your first test run. Chatham taps another icon. The screen on the tablet changes to a flowchart diagram of what you assume to be the Lionheart's dedicated flight software. In addition, I was considering the option of installing a predictive control module capable of increasing your reaction time significantly. Before you can reply, the doctor holds up a finger. However, it has come to my attention that the Caliburn's battle group has managed to recover a certain crate from the WDI facility on Vedria Prime. Captain Balin nods. That's correct, Doctor. Doing Chatham's voice makes my throat dry. Dr. Chatham smiles again. Well then, I have permission to inform you that the crate contains parts for a prototype particle rifle capable of firing fully automatic fire. It was, to be frank, the gun the Lionheart was built around. The rifle the machine is currently equipped with is nothing more than a stopgap test model. I have authorization to recover, assemble, and install that weapon onto the Lionheart if you should wish. You nod, though you can't be sure you are paying attention. If what the doctor is saying is accurate, the weapon inside the white crate tucked into the corner of the hangar bay is a weapon capable of giving the Lionheart the ranged firepower of dozens of Grangers or Manninghams. The Dr. Chatham turns to you. There is a problem. The Lionheart only has the ability to mount one of these modifications at a time. As the pilot, I shall allow you the privilege of deciding which modification to be installed. We're taking the rifle? Dr. Chatham nods as he tucks his data tablet under his arm. Very good. I shall have my team transferred from Crown Station, and we may begin work immediately. The next 16 hours pass slowly. The Caliburn's hangar bay, still under Marine guard, soon fills with teams of men and women in strange jumpsuits, marked by arcane security badges and armed with tools you have never seen before. Dr. Chatham seems an entirely different person. As soon as he and his team started working, his eyes gleam with the zeal of a missionary, and he sets about organizing his team of technicians with feverish enthusiasm. All other considerations fall by the wayside, and soon he is entirely subsumed by his work. Captain Balin leaves within an hour, pleading the need to return to her administrative duties, but plainly bored by the proceedings. Chief Weaver is anything but. He follows the newcomers around like a hawk, scrutinizing every movement and every alteration, however temporary, to the personal kingdom that is now his hangar bay. Regardless, you are the subject of even greater scrutiny. For the entire day, your hand-eye coordination is tested and retested. Your reflexes are timed down to a picosecond. The muscle and bone structure of everything from your trigger finger to your spine is examined, analyzed, and re-examined. All of this at Dr. Chatham's command. The old man insists that the prototype weapon be calibrated to conform exactly to the speed and form of your body and mind. The bond between weapon and pilot must be as near perfect as possible, the doctor insists more than once. Whatever other faults the man may have, he certainly doesn't do things by the halves. You end the day exhausted, with barely enough strength to stagger to your quarters, tumble into bed, and fall asleep. You are so tired that you don't even have the energy to dream. However, you notice something.
The experiences of the last few battles have honed your skills and capabilities. While you did not have the time to notice it in the heat of battle, Dr. Chatham's physically demanding testing has let you realize that your abilities are continuing to grow. Indeed, on the first day of testing, you realize that, hmm, this might be a good chance to just go like this and go, what do we have here? Piloting is 4, perception 1, willpower 2, presence 2. Okay, well, let's return to the game. Reflexes and coordination, I like that. Situational awareness, that's uh, whatever. Willpower, nah, we're bumping this up. I think it was at 4, so let's see. Next, 5. Yeah, okay, I think that's a perfect score. Anyway, it happened an hour before the end of the day's tests. With everyone already exhausted, it was easy enough for one of Dr. Chatham's technicians to slip and fall off one of the maintenance bay ladders. You managed to catch the man and put him down safely on the hangar bay almost before you realized you were doing it. It was only afterwards that the doctor told you that according to the readings he took earlier, your coordination and reflexes had developed greatly since your last physical evaluation, before you were assigned to the Caliburn. Apparently, hours and hours of piloting a combat armature in battle have improved your abilities to oh my gosh, have improved your ability to pilot a combat armature in battle. Go figure. The next day is even more of the same. More tests, more examinations, more analysis. Only now, you are strapped into the Lionheart's cockpit as the long process of hardware installation begins. Once again, Dr. Chatham demands that everything be calibrated to his exacting standards. That evening, you stumble back to your quarters, even more exhausted than the night before. The third day is spent finishing up the process of hardware installation. Where you had been measured and calibrated to fit the machine on the first day, the machinery is now tweaked and recalibrated to fit you. With an hour or two left in the day, you finally have a chance to power up the Lionheart and work with the new modifications yourself. You are obviously not allowed to fire the weapon inside the hangar bay, of course, but you do get a feel for its weight and heft. In your head, you know that the prototype rifle is twice as heavy as the previous particle rifle, which the Lionheart had mounted, but the recalibration of the Lionheart's arm had been so precise that you barely feel the difference. You have to admit, Dr. Chatham and his team did an excellent job of installing the new weapon. For the first time in 3 days, you now finish up a few minutes early. Dr. Chatham, the enthusiasm in his voice now fading that his work is done, coolly informs you that your machine should now be ready for action the next morning. You barely hear him as you stumble out of the hangar bay towards the galley, where you eat your first proper dinner in 3 days. You don't even remember falling asleep. The next morning, you wake up in your quarters to the harsh squawking of the alert klaxon. The ship shifts and shudders as you pick yourself out of bed. The Caliburn is undocking from Crown Station. From the display mounted on your screen, you can see that the rest of the fleet is in motion as well. The pale blue fire of their main drives lighting up the darkness of space in vast ordered arrays. As quickly as you can, you get dressed, for there can only be one reason why the entire fleet would be moving forward in battle formation. The enemy is here. For the second time in a week, you are going to face the Imperial Grand Fleet in combat. But that entire battle is for next time. Holy cow, that was a long episode and my throat is killing me, so I'm going to wrap this up right here, right now. Till next time, guys. Later.